Yeah.
Shalom, shalom. You're watching Rabbi Simon Altaf and Rabbi Jeremiah in another program for Hebrew Bible Secrets. So we're going to, without wasting too much time, I'm going to hand it over to Rabbi Jeremiah.
Okay, thank you. Tila Hakoin, thank you very much. Hakoin, I'd like to kick off with Matthew 19:3 about the Pharisees.
Right.
Now, the Pharisees also spoke to Jesus or Yahushua, also came unto him, tempting him and saying unto him, is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause?
Right, so we're discussing the issue of divorce.
Exactly, the issue of divorce.
Are we permitted to divorce our wives or wife in the case of whatever, what had happened at that time in the context, what's occurring is we've got to understand who are these people, the Pharisees.
Who are they? Yeah.
Not all the Pharisees were good guys. Let's get that clear first. And not all the Pharisees were genetic Israel. A lot of them were converts. And today, I want to throw a little bit parallel with Pharisees.
Okay.
There was a lot of controversy with some of the Pharisees, whilst others were very good as well. Mm-hmm. So the controversy is this, that they came with new theologies, new doctrines, a new way to do things, which wasn't always in line with our scriptures, with our books.
Okay.
So therefore, what we see is that here the Pharisees come and they're challenging Rabbi Yeshua, and they're saying to him that it is okay to divorce for every reason. They're not asking him a question like, please tell us. I'm interested in knowledge.
Yeah.
They're not doing it for knowledge.
Right.
They're doing it as an act of trying to put this person down because they don't like him for some reason. Mm-hmm. Right? So that's the context.
Right.
Because some of these Pharisees were basically people who had converted out of their other idolatrous religious systems, Idumea, Edomites. Mm-hmm. They had converted over and they became the Pharisees of the day. Right. I'm not saying all of them, but some of them were definitely from that line. In fact, many of them were. So when we see this, this Pharisee is standing against Rabbi Yeshua, he's a native. Right. These are not native.
Okay.
So these non-natives are coming to him and trying to now saying that we know the Torah better than you, kind of thing.
So they were running the temple at the time, basically.
Well, a lot of the Pharisees were involved in it. Although the temple was run by the Sadducees, the people from the priesthood. Okay. But having said that, they're called the Sadducees. So having said that, so what they did, they came and asked this question because people were divorcing their wives for every reason. So if a wife made bad cooking, a person would be able to divorce the wife. So then we had two schools of thought. We had the school of Shammai and we had the school of Hillel. So sometimes we found that Hillel was very lenient towards divorce. They permitted divorce in many cases. Right. We found that the school of Shammai was not lenient towards divorce. They said, no, you can't divorce a wife unless for a particular reason. So what Rabbi Yeshua is doing, he is now basically saying that no, God has not allowed you to just divorce for any particular reason. God made them male and female. Here he's referencing what we spoke about in the previous program. He is speaking about Genesis chapter 1 verse 27.
Right.
God made them male and female.
Right.
Well, what's he talking about? Is he talking about Adam and Eve or Adam and Lilith? So, right?
Yeah.
So let's not go there, but that's what it is. And then he says he made them and he made them one flesh. Well, we know the first flesh, one flesh that Adam had, she left.
Yes.
So therefore, then he says, goes on to say, because they say to him that Moses commanded us in Matthew 19:6. Moses commanded us. And so therefore we got the authority from Moses. This is only because of the hardness of your hearts. In other words, that divorce, even Yeshua tells people that divorce is permitted in the case of adultery.
Right.
What they call fornication in the New Testament. Okay. That's a very bad word. Because there's no such word in our Hebrew that translates to fornication.
What would it be then if we wouldn't use the word fornication?
It will be similar? It'll be whoring.
Whoring.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically a whoring is somebody. So, for instance, I'm not saying that the rabbinic authorities changed many things. They later adopted a lot of oral Torah, and some of the oral Torah wasn't exactly from our forefathers. Some of it was, some of it wasn't. Okay. So, what wasn't is, in one instance, for instance, in this area, we have to talk about injustice. A wife having an unjust husband, a husband who beats a wife, she's supposed to stay bound to him, etc. So a lot of these issues arose where divorces were permitted. Yeah. But beyond that, divorce was supposed to be closely examined by the rabbis before a divorce will be issued, because a woman wasn't allowed to get a divorce by herself. In other words, she could apply for a divorce, but her husband had to say yes or no to it.
Right.
So if her husband said, I'm not releasing you, then she couldn't do nothing about it. Therefore, this is why it becomes imperative that understand Torah law was very close-knit within the society. And so these people are bringing this challenge on, not like, please tell us. They're trying to put him down, basically. And then he corrects them by saying that, no, it wasn't like this, it was like that. So this is what we see. And then the next issue arises in there is that the issue of adultery, punishment of adultery, etc., etc.
Right. And also Matthew 19:5, and said, for this cause shall a man leave father and mother,
right,
and shall cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh.
Right.
So in that respect, what I understand is that a man could have more than one wife and still be one flesh. Is this correct?
Well, I mean, it might be too controversial for the viewers.
But we do controversial. I mean, I think it's we should talk about these matters.
Should we cut these clips out?
Shall we cut it?
You may have seen that the words that might be utmost blasphemy in Western culture.
Okay.
So, well, yes, because if we look at our ancient culture, model of Abraham had four wives.
Right.
Jacob had 4 wives. King David had many wives as a king. So what we see in the Torah culture, that our forefathers usually had 2 wives, north and south divide,
right,
what we call the north and south divide. And so there was a way to place a wife in the north. She will give you the princely son, and there was a wife put in the south. So the south represented something like, increases from God, benefits, the land, property and all that.
Yeah.
And the north represented rulership in our understanding.
Okay.
So therefore, what we see is that a man could be one flesh with more than one wife at, of course, different time.
Yeah.
So therefore, one flesh doesn't necessarily mean one couple. It could be 2 couples. Well, was Abraham one flesh with Sarah and Hagar or not? Yes, he was.
Yes, he was. Yeah.
Was Abraham one flesh with Sarah and Keturah, his wife, or not? Yes, he was. So therefore, he produced 6 sons from Keturah. And so a lot of the rabbis like to, make out that wasn't Keturah, that was Hagar. But unfortunately, again, as I said, some of what you learn from rabbinic side is bunk. It's total nonsense. It's not true. It's not what it was.
Yeah.
So we have to look at the forefathers, and we have to see that they don't tie up. Hagar is not Keturah, Keturah is not Hagar.
Yes,
let's get that straight.
Of course.
So therefore, we have to understand that yes, it occurred in those cultures. Today is much harder. And I want to speak about a controversy that happened in England. Okay. In this country.
Okay.
There was a man that I heard about. I've never met the man. He's called Rabbi Sharp, Philip Sharp.
Right.
I had heard that he was excommunicated by the Christian community, stroke Messianic,
right,
because he had more than one wife. So one time I saw him in a TV program with 7 wives. To me, it doesn't matter whether he has 7 wives or 70 wives. It doesn't matter, because if he's a man who wants to obey God and do his thing, fine, great. I don't cut people off because they excommunicate them. So that actually happened in England, modern England, where Christians supposedly cut this man off, slandered him, made all sorts of stories about him, etc. So Christianity today, majority of Christianity lives in ignorance, because the very church they follow, that very church in the 4th century used to allow a wife and a concubine.
Right.
They used to allow that. But where did he get that from? From the Torah.
From the Torah.
But so therefore, it wasn't just one concubine. It could be more than one concubine. It could be just one wife.
Yeah.
So what you do with your life, Rabbi Jeremiah, is your business. You could come. Somebody could come to you and say, "I want to do X, Y, Z," and you could guide them onto that.
Yeah.
What you do is your business. It's not my business to tell you how many wives you must take.
Yes.
Or whether you can stuck with one wife, or whether a half wife, or whether a 3/4 wife.
Yes.
Not my business.
Yes.
My business is to talk about Torah and justice. How to live right with God's law. That's my remit. So therefore, what people do with their lives, if a wife is being rebellious, what they do with that rebellious wife, we clearly know what they do with the rebellious wife. But having said that, we can only guide people. We are not policemen. to force people.
No, of course.
So yes, many things happened in our Torah, but I'm not saying that everybody has to do that, because it doesn't apply to everybody.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that this guy actually went back to the ancient paths, and by having 7 wives.
Well, you see, Christians will present the argument that it wasn't in the garden. Well, what do you know about the garden? Ask Christianity, and they'll say, well, it was Adam and Eve. But they know nothing about Adam. Nothing about Adam. They don't know there was Adam, there's Eve, there's Lilith, and there was others as well.
Yes.
Nothing about that. So therefore, Christianity is definitely not the one to answer that question. We can answer the question. God permitted it. At that time, God doesn't change.
Right.
So therefore, the allowance is still made. We have other cultures, Islamic culture. They marry into more than one wife. They are allowed to stay in England today with more than one wife in their Islamic law, right? So Jewish law permits more than one wife as well. Even the Ashkenaz know about that. And we have instances, Yemenite Jews, many of them had more than one wife in Yemen.
Right.
We had Sephardi Jews, they had more than one wife. So when we had the Ashkenazi injunction by Rabbi Gershom, there was a 500-year injunction that was put 1,000 years ago to prevent Jews from being killed in Europe, because Christians were jealous of the Jews. Why? Because they may have more than one wife. They maybe had better lives because they served the God of Israel. So a lot of that, unfortunately, transpired into what we understand as the Holocaust.
Right.
So therefore, let's not pretend that 2 wives caused the Holocaust. But we know that there was a lot of jealousies around the factor that you're a Jew, that you serve the God of Israel, and then they didn't like that. Who didn't like that? Wasn't Muslims in Europe, it was Christians. Christians, supposedly Hitler, now today Christians will say, well, Hitler wasn't Christian. Well, Hitler was saying, I am acting on the right of the Lord.
That's right.
Which Lord? I don't know which Lord he was acting upon. However, today Christians are ashamed of that past, and they should be. And they should apologize to the people that they persecuted and killed, which is basically our family. So therefore, I'm saying that a lot of injustices were committed in the name of Christianity, and because we're talking about Christianity now, let's talk about Christianity and not some other religion, because there are other religions that did similarities, but maybe not as on a greater level. So this is why I think that this is a controversial subject. People don't like to acknowledge it, but unfortunately, it's reality.
It is reality. And it's good that we can discuss these things, and we should, really.
Right.
So I would now come to this question. Why did Yahushua come into the temple? Regards to John 8:2.
Well, if you remember, John 8 is, we spoke about this in the last program, the issue of adultery. That this particular verse or verses, the story of the adulteress, is not present in any earlier Gospels of John, the copies thereof, but later inserted into it. So, how does a person come into the temple and teach? That means that person has connections to the temple some way. In other words, that he knows somebody, or somebody else knows somebody else. If I go to the Houses of Parliament today, if Rabbi Simon happens to go to the House of Parliament, then that means Rabbi Simon must have some contact with some minister.
You couldn't just walk in and just,
Or if I go to the House of Lords and sit there for 5 minutes, maybe I had some contact, they allowed me in. Just a point of observation. So, why Rabbi Yeshua or Yahushua was able to enter the temple? Because most people don't know. See, again, a lot of people live in ignorance. Most people don't know that his adopted father, his name was Joseph of Arimathea. He was a brother of Miriam, the mother of Yeshua, known as Jesus. So Joseph of Arimathea was a very rich man, and he had 2 seats on the on the board in the temple. Therefore, Yeshua could come and sit there and teach. Otherwise, he had no right to teach in there. So therefore, he comes in the temple, and the issue of adultery comes up, and then he talks about the issue of adultery, because we're going to come into that next. Probably. So then we talk about what is the punishment for adultery. A lot of people will think that the punishment for adultery is simply stoning the woman to death, or both the man and the woman who are committing the act. However, that is not true either. But
it does say that in the Torah, though. Obviously, adultery. Obviously, this is how we're going to read it, and some people are going to read it as well. The punishment for adultery is stoning.
Yes, but there is a what we call a within the halakha. There is a way to kill somebody, and there is a way not to kill somebody.
Right. The halakha, we're talking about the laws.
The laws of the Torah.
Of the Torah.
So the laws of the Torah tell us that in adultery, the only time the punishment is stoning is when the man and the woman, when the woman is betrothed, first part of marriage, which we basically called Irusin in the Hebrew. Right. Irusin means she's betrothed as a wife to somebody. Okay. Like what you call engagement in the Western culture. Mm-hmm. That's marriage in the Hebrew culture. So if she has an Irusin, then she's caught in the act, is stoning. If she's done the Kiddushin, which is the act of marriage and consummation, then it's not stoning, it's strangulation.
Okay.
Both cases she'll be killed.
Right.
But they're different.
Okay. And just to get a understanding, what will happen to the man also who she committed adultery?
The man will be killed with her publicly
right.
if he's caught, unless he's left town.
Right. Okay.
So generally, here people kind of disappear. 2-4 and they're gone.
Of course. I understand. Yeah. Okay, that's great. Right. Thank you for answering that one. So why did the scribes and the Pharisees bring a woman to Yeshua for adultery?
Well, we discussed this in the last program, do you remember? Because they should have brought her to the temple priesthood. Because it will be the high priest who will be commissioned to do the act of sota.
Right. So basically what we're saying is everything that obviously has to be made a judgment on has to be taken to the high priest.
That's right.
Always.
That's right. So they have to be taken to the priesthood. Then the priesthood, looking at the case, like a priest can look at the case and say, well, high priest has to deal with this case. I can't deal with it myself directly. So certain acts were only to be dealt with by the high priest. Others could be dealt with by the person who's not a high priest. So it depends
on the severity.
The severity of each case. You see, in Christianity, every sin takes you to hell.
Right. Yeah.
not in Judaism. Okay. Every sin don't kill you.
Right. So there is a way out in Judaism. Yeah. I mean, it's not death.
The punishment is not always death. There's always on alternative punishment depending on the severity of the crime.
Right.
That's very, very important.
Okay. So if we can just talk about that again with terms of Yeshua for adultery.
I mean the adulterous case
and the sota as well, because I think that's important. If we touch on the sota, right. What is the sota? If we can just explain that again.
Well, I think if we discuss the case of sota, we have to read Numbers chapter 5 for that.
Okay.
And Numbers chapter 5 details a process that the high priest would carry out.
Right.
Our ancient women, they covered themselves. They covered their heads. They wear modest clothes. So what would happen is that when a husband basically alleged that his wife has committed adultery, they would take her into the temple or the tabernacle, and she practically would be publicly humiliated. Her head covering will be thrown off,
right.
Her shirt will be slightly open, and then the priest will make her swear an oath,
right.
And then give her some water to drink with the name of Yahweh, dissolved in the water with some earth from the temple, and if she was guilty. It's very important actually.
Yeah.
If she was guilty, then what would happen is that she would start to, if she denied it, her thighs will start to rot, her stomach and thighs. So what would God do is God would create a golem in her stomach.
Right.
As a punishment.
Okay.
Like a baby, it's not a baby but a golem. So what the golem will do is start to rot, it'll start causing the rot of the thighs and the stomach, and the woman will die excruciating. It may not happen immediately.
Right.
It may happen afterwards. But sometimes it happened immediately.
Okay.
Sometimes afterwards.
Okay.
So she will die. Now, what if she was innocent? What if she was innocent? God gave her a miraculous birth. So he made her miraculously. She will go back home and she'll become pregnant, and she will give birth to a son. That's also true.
Okay.
So therefore, these two things are applicable. And so we go back to, when we talk about sota, we go back to Lilith. Well, the first woman.
Right.
So what happened to the first woman? God judged her, and he removed her legs, and she became a serpent, the very serpent that you read about in the book of Genesis.
Right. So there's the serpent that we read about in Genesis was basically Lilith.
Yeah, it wasn't a he.
It wasn't a he. It was a she, basically.
Right, because a lot of Christians came out with variants of doctrines on that. You hear about the serpent seed and all sorts of other doctrines that Christian camps arose with, and they made their, I guess, different denominations on that as well.
Yeah.
But the thing is that wasn't the case. If the serpent was very much Lilith, who came to avenge her, basically Adam had technically in some way had insulted her, although she is the one who insulted Adam. But so she came back to have vengeance on the children of Adam. So therefore, deceiving Eve was one of those things that she wanted to do. So if she could deceive Eve into eating of the fruit of the tree that was forbidden, then of course they will come directly in what I call a judgment with God.
Right.
Because you see, if you don't do the wrong thing, God's not going to strike you down, is he?
No.
So if you do the wrong thing, then things will happen over a time. Maybe your life will start to deteriorate. You'll go down and down and down until you're on the floor. Somebody kicks you, you're on the floor as well. You can't get up. So God works through your actions. If you do the deeds of the Torah, you do the right thing, and you start to rise up. Spiritually, God will raise you up. So therefore, in this particular instance, we got to understand that she had to bring Eve down. So where do we see this narrative in the Torah, in the Hebrew Bible, where this happened to our people? There was one place where it happened, because Israel couldn't be put down. Israel was supposed to be a blessed nation.
Yes.
That's what we are told. That's what God instructed Abraham, that anybody who curses you will be cursed. Anybody who blesses you, he treats you as worthless, he will be cursed down himself.
Yes.
So therefore, what we find from there is that what we understand is that we must watch ourselves for sin, because God also tells Cain, sin lies at your door and you can overcome it.
Right.
See, Christianity teaches you can't overcome sin. Of course you can. If God says sin lies at your door, you can overcome it.
So how can we just touch on that then? How do you, being the priest, I mean, if we can basically just speak about that quickly, how do we overcome sin?
Well, let's just finish the fact that story, because I didn't quite finish. The narrative is when we come against God. You see, God will not punish you if you're not against Him in any way. So what happened in the time of, if you remember, the Israelites, they were going through their journey, and then we have a very nefarious character by the name of Balaam, who Christians know as Balaam, whose donkey speaks. So therefore, God makes his donkey speak. And Balaam brings up God. Balaam is used by Balak to curse the people of Israel, but he can't do it, although he speaks to God. He is a Gentile prophet, as we understand it. So he can't do it. And eventually, what happens is that Balaam advises Balak. He says, "Look, these people are blessed people of God. You can't curse them. God won't allow me to do that. But what you can do is cause sin in their midst, cause them to do a sin, then God will punish them."
Right.
So then what Balaam does, he advises the king Balak to do that, and Balak brings Moabite women, Jordanian women, who then seduce Israel. So the people who fall are the people who were seduced, and then God punishes them for that. The thing that they were causing was going over to women who were not permitted. So my point is that this is what Eve did, and this is what happened to Eve.
Right.
Lilith brought Eve into a position of judgment. Otherwise, she could never be judged with Adam. They wouldn't be thrown out.
Right.
So we know that if somebody is against you, they'll try to bring you into that situation. But if you are careful, then you can't come into that situation. So that's basically, I wanted to tie the two narratives together.
Okay, thank you for that. Excellent.
So now you can move on to your next bit.
Okay, so basically, how does one basically overcome sin or deal with sin if one has sin?
Well, we are told today that we're told in our books that we'll be without temple for a long time and without a king.
Right.
So we are told by the repentance of our mouth that when we ask forgiveness to God and we repent of our known sins, then God will forgive us. So it's through repentance, deeds of actions of the Torah, and penance for us is not the same as Catholic penance or Christian, I guess, is that we give tithes, we give Zadaqah. Zadaqah also relieves your sin.
Okay, and what is Zadaqah? Exactly, quickly, Hakoin, what is Zadaqah?
Zadaqah is like a form of charity,
right.
And then we are commanded to give it. Usually it's about 10% of your salary. Some people give less, some give more. So therefore, this is basically where Zadaqah comes in. And the children of Israel are supposed to give a piece of Zadaqah. We are told in the book of Isaiah that Zadaqah is what also redeems you.
That's right. It's a form of justice.
It's a form of justice.
Okay.
That's right. That's
Okay.
right.
That's great. So we'd like to say thank you very much from HaKohen for being with us here today. And myself, Rabbi Jeremiah, thank you very much for watching. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom.
You went a bit